Something that makes Cage different than the other heroes is that he is a criminal. Like he clearly states that the reason why he can have such a focus is he doesn't have a life outside of war. Like I guess even the guardsmen they have off time, but the whole penal system's actually pretty interesting because like they don't have bases, they have fucking colonies. And so that's how like all like Schaefer basically he runs the entire penal trooper faction and it's an interesting little infrastructure for sure. He never just like goes along with it though, and that's what's really important. Is at any moment he could just flip out and ruin everything for everyone. And I think that's an important delineation. Is he still isn't really a hero, but what I do like about him being a protagonist is it clearly, like Oriole just clearly explained right then that I want you here because you're not gonna die. That's his whole thing. That's his whole thing. The others steer clear of me while I wait for the Tau ship, which is due to arrive soon. They're not sure what my role is now, and to be honest, neither am I. The colonel hasn't spoken to me since since I came back. He just stalked off angrily when Inquisitor Oriole told him that I'd be coming along. It's Oriole who summons me a little while later, after I've had a chance to clean up from the fighting during my hijack. He's taken up office in one of the staterooms above the Laurels of Glory. I'm escorted there by a sullen armsman. I probably killed some of his friends for all I know. Not that I care. There's nothing anyone can tell me about losing comrades in battle, because I've lost them all. It's one of the reasons I feel I have to carry on with life, so that someone remembers them and the sacrifices that they made so that others would be safe. They'll never be commemorated, never be heroes except as I remember them. I can see their faces as I walk along the corridor behind the armsmen. Good memories. That might seem strange, and I never would have considered it at the time. But there's not a bunch of people I'd rather go to hell with than them. They're not here this time, so it's up to me now. Oriole calls me after I knock, and I step into the stateroom. It's richly furnished, with 5 deep leather armchairs, a few low tables, and cabinets neatly arranged along the walls. Oriole is sitting on the chair furthest from the door, and he beckons me over to the chair opposite him with a wave. Sit down, Cage, he prompts me. You have some catching up to do. I do as he says, sitting on the edge of the chair, feeling uncomfortable under his gaze. Colonel Schaefer has briefly explained the situation, I believe. He carries on when he's decided I'm settled. Yeah, there's a Tau ship coming to pick us up, I say, trying to recall what the colonel had said earlier. It seems unbelievable that it was only a few hours ago. It seems like days. We pretend to be a diplomatic mission on board, go to some Tau world, meet up with the guys on the inside who are helping us out. It's something like that, agrees Oriole, leaning forward and resting his arms on his knees. I will be masquerading as an imperial commander of one of the worlds close by the Tau territories. You and the others are supposed to be my counselors, my advisors, as it were. That should be fun, I say impulsively, and he gives me a quizzical look. Getting to advise an inquisitor, I mean. Well, you forget that all of us. Well, you forget all of that as of now, he says sternly. Even our contacts do not realize who I truly am. They believe in my part of the subterfuge. If they even get a sniff that the Inquisition is involved, they'll be scared off. They don't know too much about us, but they've heard enough stories to make them suspicious of anything that involves the Inquisition. I can't think why, I say to myself. Not that I think they're a bunch of underhanded, murderous, double-dealing torturers and witch hunters, you understand, or that my previous experiences with Oriel have left me with a certain knowledge that they consider everyone expendable to their cause, including themselves. Now, I don't mind that so much. After all, I've sacrificed a few bodies for my own ends myself. But at least I don't claim the Emperor gives me the right to do it. Now, I and Colonel Schaefer will do any talking when necessary, he continues, not noticing my distraction. If you are asked any direct questions by anyone, then simply reply that you don't know the answer, or that you're not in a position to comment. Play dumb, you mean? I summarize my own charming style. Yes, play dumb, agrees Oriel patiently, tapping his fingers together slowly as if counting something. Remember, to refer to me as either sire or imperial commander, and don't call Schaefer colonel or sir. None of us are supposed to have military rank. Obviously, the Tau don't believe that for a moment, but we have to play a game called diplomacy, which means at least pretending we're not on military missions to spy on them. That's exactly what they're expecting us to be doing. And they will also be continuously trying to get what information they can from us. Excuse me, but why exactly would we be sending diplomats to an alien world? I ask, a thought occurring to me. And why are we bothering the mission at all? Why not just assemble a war fleet and blast this traitor commander back under the stone he crawled from? Well, let me explain it in simple terms. The Inquisitor replies calmly, no hint of annoyance or impatience over my interruption. He's a cool character, and no mistaking. Our relationship with the Tau is delicately balanced. At the present time, their empire is slowly expanding into the Emperor's domains, and contest for worlds has occurred. However, they are not overtly hostile to mankind, merely see us as being in the way. Unlike, for example, the Tyranids, who would wipe us out. In fact, with the massive Tyranid threat and the latest hive fleets in this area of the galaxy, we cannot afford to start a long and costly war with the Tau without weakening our defenses in other sectors. Therefore, for the moment, we try to keep our approach as peaceful as possible. Soon, sometime in the future, the Tau will need dealing with, but not yet. The Emperor has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. There is no need to be hasty. I sit there nodding, absorbing this piece of information. So what he's saying is there's no point starting a war we don't need. Not when there's plenty of other battles to win first. I can see sense in that. After all, only an idiot picks a fight, with more than one guy at a time. And like he says, there's plenty of time later to sort out the Tau, once we've dealt with the Tyranids. He spends the next hour or so explaining the various details of the cover stories, emphasizing again and again how important it is that we don't raise any suspicions among the Tau. He lays it out on a pretty thick, but this is his mission, so I guess he has the right to. I take it all in, the name of the world we're from, where we're supposedly visiting a Tau, what to keep my eyes out for, what we can learn about these aliens for the future, as well as completing the mission itself. As I said, I'll do what I'm told. I'm just a soldier, and I'll follow my orders. I'm not really worried about the reasons. That kind of thinking is for those who might question their orders. And I've got no time for them. I broke my oath once, and look where it got me. This time out, I'm doing things the right way, even though the colonel tried to stop me. When he finishes, Oriel asks if I have any questions. How come you didn't back up the colonel? I say. Why didn't you just have me shot? Because any man desperate enough to take over a shuttle and fly back to take part in a suicide mission is desperate enough to do whatever's necessary, he answers with a smile. I know from your past that I can rely on you, Cage. So does Colonel Schaefer. But he can't be seen to bargain with you. He can't allow the others to think that there's some kind of weakness in him. And to be honest, there isn't. I can be more flexible. I don't need to maintain my authority. I have absolute authority. Yes, being an inquisitor answers that question, eh? I reply, matching Oriel's smile. His fades. I have a sacred duty, just as Colonel Schaefer has, he tells me sternly. I have absolute authority because I have absolute responsibility. All means are at my disposal, but all threats to the Emperor and his servants are mine to combat. I'm allowing you on this mission because I think you'll contribute and help me in my cause. I will use you in any way I please. And as soon as I stop finding you useful, Colonel Schaefer can do what he likes with you. Is that clear? Perfectly, I answer quietly, feeling like I've been slapped in my face. But I'm not a tool. I'm a weapon, and they can go off in your hand. Yes, they can, laughs Oriel. Just don't self-destruct on me until the mission is over. He dismisses me with a wave of his hand, and I feel his eyes on me as I leave the room. The armsmen take me back through the ship to our own quarters, leaving me outside the door to my room. I watch him walk away before opening the door and stepping inside. Something smashes into my face, dropping me to my knees. Through watery eyes, I look up and see Morik standing over me, the others behind him. I put an arm out to push myself up, and Tross steps forward and kicks me in the ribs, knocking the wind out of me. Just stay there and listen for a moment, Cage, Strelly says, walking up and pushing me over with his foot on my wounded shoulder. The colonel wasn't too impressed with you coming back, Cage, Tross snarls. You're like a gun with a hang fire. Could go off at any moment. We're keeping an eye on you. You so much as breathe out a turn, we're going to enjoy putting you in a body bag. Quick as a sump snake, I roll over, wrapping my hand around Strelly's leg, wrenching him to the ground, twisting his knee viciously. Trost tries to kick me, but I sweep his legs out from under him with a kick to his knee. Morik throws a strong punch at me, but I turn and take it on my shoulder, rolling to my feet in one move. Strelly launches himself up at me from the floor, but I bring my knee up and smash it into his face as he tries to wrap his arms around my waist and bear me down. His momentum knocks me a step back, and Morik wraps an arm around my throat, squeezing tight. I ram an elbow back into his ribs and he grunts, but doesn't let go. Tross has recovered and pushes himself to his feet as I try to wriggle free, slamming my elbow repeatedly into Morik's body, tweaking his grip enough that I burst free and drive my fist straight into Tross' face, spinning him down to the ground. Morik kicks me in the guts and then grabs me by the throat, heaving me off my feet and hurling me backwards into the wall, smashing my head against the bulkhead. Stunned, I just manage to dodge as he thunders a right hand at me, but duck into Strelly's fist, which catches me on the right cheek, stinging like mad. My vision whirls, and I see the other standing there, watching impassively as Morik drives one of his fists into my guts, and again, bruising the ribs and knocking all the breath out of me. This is just so you don't forget, Cage, he says, no trace of anger in his voice. Like a machine, he grabs my throat in his hands and holds me back against the wall, delivering a short jab with his right that crashes my head back, pain flaring through my brain at the impact. He lets go and I drop to the floor, gasping for breath and bleeding from my nose and mouth. Trost makes the lay into me some more, but Morik steps in and shoves him away. I think he's got the message, the ex-commissar says, holding Trost back. I dart them all a murderous look as I lie there, every part of me acting painfully. They file out through the door connecting my room to the dorm, contempt in their eyes. My ribs are really sore and pain flashes through me as I push myself to my feet. I reckon some of them's bruised, or maybe even cracked. My bottom lip is beginning to swell, and dried blood is clogging up my nose as I slump down to the bed and groan again. I've taught them well, I think. They're the sort of soldiers the colonel needs, the ones who understand about fighting and power and how to use it. I start to chuckle, but stop abruptly. My ribs send stabs of pain through my body again. I lie there looking at the ceiling, feeling the bruises growing across me. They prove they have what it takes, and they'll kill me, and they'll kill when they need to. They're my soldiers, all right. I close my eyes and let sleep take away the pain. I think a hard lesson, I think the hardest lessons can only be taught with tough love. So there's really, I in real life, I had a friend and he told me that he was going to like some camp where they're going to train him how not to be interrogated. And I'm like, well, are you going to leave with all your fingernails? I think there's two kinds of training. There's the kinds of training where they try to get the best done for as many people as possible. And then there's the kind of training where basically it's not training at all. It's just weaning out people that won't be there for the next step. I hurt my shoulder yesterday boxing. It really hurts bad. I think I popped it out of the socket or something. I'm gonna need someone to help me pop it in, but until then, the battle goes on. I mean, what would Cage do? If I would have, like, I did cry out in the middle of the fight because it hurt more than anything else. And he was like, "Oh, fuck, are you okay?" And that's the thing, though. So I didn't say anything because he didn't know my weakness. If he would have known my weakness, it would have been over for me. That the left side of my body is fucking vulnerable. And that's another thing, right? Is attrition is so different. You can survive. You can survive the battle, but making it through the next one, the next one, and the next one. It's 3 more it's 3 more days of training in the firing range, on the combat mats, and in the mock-up of the Tau Battle Dome before the colonel informs us that contact has been made with the alien vessel. We assemble in the briefing auditorium, where the colonel issues us with clothes chests and our disguises. We lug them back to the rooms to prepare for the shuttle. In my trunk are brown robes, typical for an administratum flunky. I understand the choice when I pull it on and put the hood on. It hides my face in complete shadow, obscuring the tapestry of scars that covers my face and head. I'll be Brother Cage then, I tell myself with a bitter smile. Probably the only scribe who can't read in the entire Imperium. There are amused looks from the others as we assemble in the docking bay. Oriel is dressed in a very grandiose get-up, an over-the-top dress uniform, hung with gold, cording, and medals. The red jacket is almost painfully bright, crossed by a garish yellow sash. Just the sort of pompous and totally meaningless display of opulence you might expect from one of the Imperium's ruling elite. The colonel wears a severe black suit, with a long-tailed coat draped over one arm. Tanya wears a long dress of deep blue, tight at the waist and high at the neck, her hair cropped really short. Oriel explained that she's posing as a member of the Sisters Famulus, Sisters Famulus, a branch of the ecclesiarchy that provides housekeepers to the imperial nobility. Trost and Strelly and Quidlin wear less extravagant versions of Oriel's uniform, while Morik is dressed in plain white leggings and a white shirt with a soft leather jerkin over the top, looking every bit the gentleman. Oriel walks over to us and gives us each the once over. Will you relax and not try to look like soldiers? He says with an annoyed scowl. This isn't going to work if you keep standing at ease like that and quick march everywhere. Remember, you're civilians. We look at each other, and I see that it's true. I try to purposefully slouch a bit more, as do the others. I cross my arms and hide my hands in the sleeves of my robes, as I've seen various departmental minutorium scribes and their like do over the years. It's kind of uncomfortable, really, and I walk back and forth a bit, trying to feel natural. I feel horribly vulnerable without my arms free, and the hood obscuring my arc of vision. Take shorter strides, Cage. You're not on a cross-country march. Oh. Take shorter strides, Cage. You are not on a cross-country march, the colonel calls out to me from where he stood at the ramp of the shuttle. I look over at him, and he nods, gesturing for me to try it out. I pace the length of the shuttle bay, some 200 meters each way, keeping my steps half what I'm used to, and I feel like I'm tottering about like a small child. I bend my back a bit more, leaning my chin down into my chest, and I try it again, and it feels a bit more natural. My gait more like the image I have in my head of Clericus Amadale, the colonel's scribe on the last mission. When Oriel is satisfied that we don't stand out like a squad of highly trained soldiers pretending to be diplomats, we all get our kit on board and settle for the ride. The mood is tense and nervous. None of us have any weapons. If the Tau take a disliking to us, there's not a thing we can do to stop them from killing us out of hand. I can understand why, though. If this is a peaceful delegation, it'll raise a few eyebrows. If we turn up with a small arsenal, that's that is if the Tau have eyebrows, I suddenly think to myself, making myself smile. We've not seen a single picture of them. They could be big bags of gas or tentacled, squiggly blobs for all I know. I guess from the fake battle dome that they can't be too different from us, physically, I mean. The doors were sort of human sized, the steps built for just 2 legs, so I guess that rules out floating gas bags. I let my mind wander with the thoughts like these, preferring to put any thought of the upcoming mission out of my mind. A couple of the others seem worried, and I tell them to relax. There's no sense worrying now. The plan is in motion, and it'll lead us wherever the Emperor cares. Personally, I try not to worry about anything. There's two things people worry about. There's things they have no control of, and they're worried about how it'll affect them. Then there are the things they worry about doing or not doing. Either way, it's a waste of time. If it's something you can't do anything about, then all the worrying in the galaxy isn't going to change what will happen one bit. And if you can do something about it, then do something. Don't just sit around and worry. Take your destiny in your hands. It's that kind of thinking that's kept me alive and sane all these years. Sane. I'm beginning to have my doubts about that, which I guess proves that I'm not mad yet. At least I don't think so. Do you have to be sane to wonder if you are? Do lunatics just assume that they are sane and not question it? I know what others think, Oriel included. Despite his choice to bring me along, they think that my mind's more twisted than a rock drill head. I don't see it that way. It's not bent at all. In fact, it's so straight, so focused on what might seem mad to other people. They like to clutter themselves up with all sorts of little illusions about who they are, what they're here for. Not me. I worked it all out in the stinking prison cell. I said to Oriel, I'm a weapon, nothing more. Point me at the enemy and let me go. That sort of clarity is more comforting than worrying about if I'm doing the right thing, wasting time and energy, agonizing my conscience and my morals. My conscience is the orders I'm given. My morals are the ones I'm told to have. Somebody else can have that responsibility. Somebody like the Colonel or Oriel. I just don't care anymore. I've been traveling for a couple of hours when the Colonel enters from the adjacent room. Here's your chance to get a good first look at the enemy, he tells us, pointing towards one of the wide viewing windows. I unbuckle myself along with the others, and we gather around the thick pane and look out into the stars. It's out there, the Tau ship, and we get a good view as the shuttle circles, losing momentum to start its landing pattern. It's long and sleek, almost pure white. The main hull is slightly like a flattened cylinder, with a cluster of pods at the back, glowing faintly. So I guess they're the engines. The front end gets flatter and wider, a bit like a stubbly squared off snake's head. There are several outlandish Tau symbols emblazoned in massive lettering along the side, but I can't make out any sign of ports, docking entries, or any other openings. I can't see any deck guns either. Is this a warship? Is this a warship? I ask Schaefer. I believe it is a non-military vessel, the colonel replies. As we approach, a section of the hull disappears from view, revealing the interior in a blaze of yellow light. It's not like a door slid back or opened. The section of the ship seemed to roll out of the way, leaving a perfectly circular opening. We return to our seats and buckle down for landing, the blast thrusters grinding up over the windows. It's a few more minutes, which pass with torturous slowness, as we sit there not knowing what's going to happen, until I feel and hear the shuttle landing. With a whine, the engines power down, and the colonel tells us to get to our feet. First impressions last, he tells us ominously. From the second we step off this craft, we'll be under close scrutiny. Right from this moment, you have to think exactly like the people you're supposed to be. We'll try to keep ourselves out of as much trouble as possible, but there will be a number of official engagements on board while we are in transit, which good manners dictate we will have to attend. Be on your guard at all times, though. The Tau will be giving a certain amount of leeway, I hope, after all. We are placing a lot of trust in them not to hold us hostage. Now move out and act casual. We troop after him and the colonel as they make their way into the docking chamber. We stay there, Oriole in front, us lined up behind him, and wait for the ramp to lower. My first view of the Tau is like nothing I've ever seen before. The shuttle bay is flooded with light, and the air is dry and warm, much hotter than I'm used to aboard a ship. As we walk down the ramp, I look around, trying hard not to stare. The chamber is a large oval shape, the floors and ceilings melding to the walls in a continuous line. Everything is a cool, pale yellow color. There's no sign of any hard edges anywhere. No supporting beams, no crisscrosses of girders and cranes for maneuvering shuttles into position. The space is cavernous in its emptiness, and I feel swallowed up by it, and yet horribly exposed at the same time. A small delegation waits for us at the bottom of the ramp. There's no guards, no guns in sight. They either really trust us, or they have some other way of dealing with us if we start to cause trouble. 3 Tau, dressed in thin, pale robes, stand patiently as we gaze around, studying us with interest. I was right. They're basically humanoid. All 3 are at least a head shorter than me, and they have delicate, thin limbs. Their grayish-blue skin seems to glisten with a kind of oil, and as the middle one steps forward and bows to one knee in greeting, I catch a sweet scent. I look at his face and bald head, noting the yellow eyes and slit-like nose, noticing lipless mouths, rounded with rounded teeth. He stands and opens his arms in greeting, revealing a flap of skin that stretches from his waist to upper arm, like deformed wings. I suppress a shudder. Nobody mentioned these things might be able to fly. The one to the leader's right steps forward, mouth curling, and a poor imitation of a human smile. Welcome to this vessel, one of our newest, Shah Kara, or Slow, he greets us, beckoning us down with a long-fingered hand. His voice blurts the words together, his pronunciation tinted by a husky accent. We extend the hand of friendship to our human allies. Oriel replies in stilted gibberish, which I reckon to be some kind of formal greeting that he's learned for the occasion. This seems to please the Tau, who look at each other and nod. This is Coral Kaya Sevon, who you may simply address as Captain El Sevon if you wish, the interpreter continues, indicating the Tau who had bowed earlier. I do not speak well your words, the captain explains apologetically, bowing his head slightly but keeping his gaze on Oriel. This is Corver Anuk. The Tau nods, ahead towards the third member of the delegation, who stands watching us impassively. I am Porla Kunas, and I will be your voice while on board the Shakarar Aslo. Please tell Captain El Savon that his hospitality does him credit, Oriel replies with an officious manner. I and my advisors would appreciate some time to rest from our journey before conducting a tour of this fine vessel. Porla Kunas says something to the captain and Tau, who replies with a single word and a glance at Oriel. All this gibbering in Tau is making me nervous. It doesn't seem like Oriel's command of the language is particularly great, and I haven't got a clue what they're saying. They could all be plotting against us, laughing right in our faces for all I know. Just another factor of this mission that makes my spine crawl. Of course, we have rooms prepared for you, the translator assures us. If you would follow me, please. Without a further word, he turns and begins to walk away from the shuttle. Looking ahead, I can see no sign of a door. The wall continues unbroken all around us. We're a few meters from the wall, with a whirl of small lines appears, making for a series of spirals, which swiftly expand as the portal opens in front of us, vanishing seemingly into the fabric of the wall. I glance over at Oriel, but he's maintaining an air of disinterest, gazing about him in a bored fashion. The others shuffle about nervously, and I can understand their unease. The whole ship stinks of technology gone wild. I glance at the doorway as I walk through and see that the wall is in fact hollow, and the segments of the iris door have simply slipped between the two bulkheads. Still, that's not reassuring. The corridor outside is just as featureless as the docking bay, and just as empty as people. As with the shuttle chamber, small curved corners seamlessly connect the walls with the floor and ceiling, the pale yellow surrounding us without any decoration, or source of light for that matter. I haven't seen a single glow globe or lighting strip. The more I think about it, the more disconcerting I find the sensation. How can they create life and light in the air itself? It's not even as if the walls are glowing. It's like the air is charged with light. Just what kind of creatures are we dealing with here? How, in the Emperor's name, can we trust him on a mission like this? With a start, I realized I've almost broken into a parade ground stride whilst I was thinking about other things. I glance at the others, who walk along in silence, subdued by our strange surroundings. I suspect they're just as nervous as me, even Oriel and the Colonel. I focus my attention back on myself, shortening my step, pulling my head further back into the hood. The air is dry and warm as well, making my throat and nose tight. I turn and look back, and the loading bay has disappeared, the door shutting silently behind us. I feel isolated and vulnerable, stuck on this alien ship with no weapons other than my bare hands. We follow our interpreter along the corridor, and I notice something, or rather, it's something that I don't notice. The whole ship seems to be still. There's no vibration, no noise, nothing. The ship was almost definitely moving when we docked. I saw that as we came into land. Inside, we could be in an underground bunker somewhere. Walking further along the corridor, my disorientation grows. There's not a single door to either side, though a few side corridors branch off along the way, melding seamlessly with the one that we've been walking along. Our guide has remained speechless since leaving the shuttle area, walking ahead of us with effortless steps. I take some time to look at him. He doesn't have the membranes under his arms that the captain has, and is even more slightly built. His robes are light and airy, wafting around him as he walks, like a breeze given shape. Like the rest of the ship, he is surrounded by an air of calm and stillness. Every movement is slight and efficient. He barely swings his arms as he walks, his face set straight ahead without a moment's distraction. I try to work out what the ship is made from, but it's impossible. There's no welding that might indicate metal. The coloration seems to be a part of the material itself. No brushstrokes or drips from paint. I wander along one wall and let my hand briefly brush along it, feeling a slight sensation of warmth from the wall itself. I watch the others from within the folds of my hood, which is beginning to get uncomfortably hot. I have to resist the temptation to pull it back for some fresh air. That makes me realize that there are no air currents, no artificial winds from cooling vents and air purifier ducts. But the air doesn't taste stale. It's just hot and has no moisture to it. Oriel strolls along behind poor Lacunas with a languid, rolling gait. The colonel stepping beside him with a more stiff stride, his attention focused on the tower in front. Quidlin keeps looking around him, staring intently at the walls and floor, probably trying to figure out how this all works. It could be witchcraft for all I know, like the accursed Eldar technology. That gives me a sudden bout of anxiety. These Tau are obviously decadent enough to blatantly use such strange technology. Perhaps they put up with psychers as well? Maybe this guide is not what he seems. Maybe he can read minds. This could all be some elaborate ruse to lull us into a false sense of security. I try to think like a scribe, just in case, but my thoughts soon begin to wander. I wonder if they'll torture us for information, trying to find out the full extent of our plot. What will be their reaction when they find out we're collaborating with our own kind? Or perhaps they'll just kill us out of hand. I know nothing about these Tau, nothing useful. I can't work out how they think, how they'll react, what their motivation really is, how predictable they are in combat, how disciplined. Of all the things that fill my brain as we carry on walking down this emperor-forsaken corridor that seems to stretch on forever, unending and unbroken, if they get suspicious, there's absolutely nothing we could do, nothing at all. We're in the middle of their ship with no weapons whatsoever, and Oriel said they would be wary. They're probably watching our every move even now, waiting for us to slip up, ready to pounce on any opportunity to unmask us and interrogate us for everything we know about the Emperor's domains and his armies. For all I know, this could be some elaborate plot by them, manipulating Oriel, so he's brought us all here. Some of the finest soldiers in the Imperial Guard, just so they can get their hands on what we know. I start to feel tense. The pain behind my eyes returns. I began to sweat even more, glad my discomfort is concealed by the heavy robes. That's just the sort of nervousness that they'll all be looking for. If I have another attack here, we're all dead. Perhaps the colonel was right. Perhaps I am too much of a liability. My mouth gets even drier as the pain in my head increases. I think I can hear the others talking, slightly panicked themselves, but I pay them no heed, concentrating on my own private agony as my heart starts to beat faster. It must be obvious by now. I feel as if I'm panting like a dog, clenching and unclenching my fists inside the folds of my sleeve. If the translator turns and looks at me, he'll see something's wrong. He'll either guess we're up to no good, or he'll fetch medical help. Then they'll be able to separate us, get me on my own, and go to work on me. Will it be torturers, or will it be mind readers? I blink heavily as I catch up with someone. Biting my tongue in panic, I glance up. It's the colonel, who looks across at me, his face expressionless, except for a slight tightness in his cheeks, which I know means he's either angry or slightly worried. "Control yourself, Cage," he whispers harshly at me. "Time to relax. The Tau expect us to be a bit tense and uneasy, but you look more guilty than a man with a smoking gun standing over a corpse. Remember to breathe in through your nose. It'll help you calm down." With that, he quickens his pace again to march up with Oriel, who glances at him and receives a nod of assurance in return. I wish I was confident. I try to distract myself by looking at the others again, but that brings little comfort. Strelly, normally so cocky and confident, gnaws on the tail of his left thumb, darting glances at the interpreter every now and again. Tanya walks along with her head bowed, staring resolutely at her feet, not meeting anyone's gaze. Morik is the most obvious, in my opinion. He strides along, his disgust barely concealed, as he scowls at the back of our guide. I see his fingers twitch spasmodically, like he's itching to get a hold of poor Lacunas' neck and squeeze the life out of him. Poor Lacunas takes a step down a right turn, then a left, and then two more turns, which I could swear look at us. Well, it took us around in circles, but there's no way of telling. Then he stops abruptly and faces the wall to the right. He reaches out his frail-looking hand and touches the door. And a moment later, another of the strange portals opens up, revealing a room beyond, where moments before there had been nothing. I look at the wall closely and see there's actually some discoloration there, like runes or switches manufactured into the material of the wall itself. These are your quarters, the interpreter says, indicating the room with his hand. At that moment, another Tau steps from an unseen side door and walks up to us. He doesn't say a word, simply stands next to the door, back to the wall. His face is set. This one is dressed in workman-like clothes, a tight-fitting blue bodysuit that is ribbed across the waist and joints. His hands and feet bare, the suit drawn tightly around his neck. He moves there and appears to be As he moves, there appears to be no wrinkling or gathering, as if the material is stretched and contracting around him. If you require anything at all, please inform me at once, poor Lacunas tells us, stepping inside the room, and we follow him in. We're in what appears to be a main living space, a rounded square about 10 meters across. A low circular cushion seems to be the only furniture, set in a hollow in the center of the room, taking up most of the space. Thankfully, the adjoining rooms are reached through the curved arches rather than the odd disc doors. There are 10 of them. In 8, I can see low, broad beds without any kind of sheets or blankets, which is strange. From what I can see, the other 2 rooms appear to be washing areas of some kind. I can just make out a basin-like fixture through the arches. Some refreshments, if you please, Oriel says, not looking at the interpreter, but strolling to one of the bedrooms. How will we contact you? The colonel asks, leaning forward to the short alien. If you say my name, the ship will inform me, he replies, taking a couple of quick paces from the imposing figure of Schaefer. The ship will inform you? Quidlin says, obviously intrigued by this magic. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Morik take a protective gesture, the sign of the eagle, with his hands. It's the first time I've seen him do anything like that. I suspect it's not part of his commissariat training. I wonder if he's holding up that as well. He's not mentally prepared for this kind of action. He's an officer and a leader. His place is in the midst of bullets and lasbolts, shouting speeches, shooting deserters, and leading the glorious charge. Yes, of course, poor Lacunas replies, with a little bit of surprise, totally oblivious to my thoughts on Morik. I will be able to attend to your needs immediately. Quidlin looks as if he's going to ask something else, but Schaefer waves a hand at him irritably. Is there a guard at our door? The colonel asks gruffly, pointing towards the corridor. We have found that humans sometimes become lost on our vessels, and he is there to ensure, should you wish to leave the room, you will have an appropriate escort. The Tau replies smoothly. You are, of course, our guests, not our prisoners. While on the ship, you may roam almost anywhere you wish. We ask that you only enter certain areas with an escort, as they may present a danger or disturb the crew in delicate duties. A full tour will be provided for you when you are rested. The colonel just grunts and darts a look at me. I stand there, dumb for a couple of seconds, until I remember what I'm supposed to be. A menial. I shuffle forward, trying to not walk with too much swagger. Bring food and drink, please, I say as politely as I can manage, the words almost catching me, dry in the throat. And Is there any way you can make it cooler in here? It's a bit like a desert. I stop myself, swearing just in time, and avoid the Tao's gaze. Of course, forgive my inattention, poor Lacunas apologizes. I shall endeavor to make the environment within your chambers closer to your normal climate. The Tao nods to the colonel and leaves, the door swirling back into place behind him. Isn't this place amazing? Blurts out Quidlin as soon as the door is closed. Can you imagine what sorts of things these people are capable of? Just considering what we've seen so far about their ship, about the way they conduct themselves. It's so fascinating. They're not they're not people. They're aliens. Don't forget it. Tross grumbles, lowering himself cautiously onto the cushion, as if expecting it to swallow up. I could do with some freshening up, says Strelly, wandering over to one of the rooms I'd identified earlier as an ablution chamber. He walks in and then comes out a moment later, scratching his head in confusion. There's no pipes, no taps, nothing. How does any of this stuff work? It senses your presence, Oriel says, appearing at the doorway to his room. I've made sure we can talk freely in these rooms, but once we step outside the door, guard your tongues. What makes you so sure? Tanya says, as we fall silent in the door. We all fall silent as the door sounds. We all fall silent as the door opens soundlessly and our guide returns. Behind him hover 5 trays, bobbling along on their own as if they were alive. I hear an involuntary hiss escape Trost, who springs to his feet. The Tao seems to be bemused by his reaction, and I realize we're all staring at the food with his wide eyes. Wow. And I realize we're all staring at the food with wide eyes. Is the food not to your liking? He says innocently, while I take concern to be on his face. We exchange incredulous looks, and it's Quidlin who recovers first. No, the food will be fine. We're not expecting it to be delivered so swiftly, he says quickly, a brief smile flashing across his lips. If you would like to leave the food with us, we have some matters we wish to discuss amongst ourselves, if that would not be impolite of us. Of course, I understand, the Tao replies evenly with a bow of his head. Please, take as long as you require. He bows again and he leaves, the trays floating across the room to hover about knee-high over the command cushion, or the communal cushion.